There's been a lot of talk lately about adolescence and the adolescent brain and how it is different than the adult brain. And that made me want to talk about one of my favorite books. I love sharing books with teachers that are not necessarily education books, but have wisdom that apply to teaching. My best moments as a teacher, and also the ones where I enjoyed teaching most, usually came from being able to see the humanity of everyone in the room, including myself. Sometimes that means backing up to a point where you just go, being human is not easy. And part of the human experience is the fact that there is this part of your brain that is not fully formed when you are a high school aged human and middle school aged human. Oh my gosh, even worse. I'm Roxana Eldon. I am an author and course creator, and I work with teachers to help make their day-to-day jobs more manageable. There are a few specific quotes that I find myself returning to whenever I need to give myself a more generous interpretation of teenage and adolescent behavior. The quotes are from a book called Behave: The Biology of Humans at Our Best and Worst. It's written by a well-known behavioral researcher named Robert Sapolsky. And my best description for it is this: it is the most thorough and most well-written explanation of every human behavior you can think of. It is the length of 2 books, but in my opinion, it offers the value of about 5 books, and I highly recommend it. The quotes I'm going to share with you in this video are a sample of Sapolsky's scientific explanations for teenage behavior. In between those quotes, I'll jump in with some less scientific observations that come from working with teachers and teaching high school students. The majority of these quotes are from this chapter, which is entitled Adolescence, or Dude, Where's My Frontal Cortex? And they managed to make teenage behavior sound kind of poetic, which is saying a lot. I'll start with a quote from early in the chapter that I think lays out kind of a thesis statement for this video. First, no part of the adult brain is more shaped by adolescence than the frontal cortex. Second, nothing about adolescence can be understood outside the context of delayed frontal cortical maturation. The frontal cortex is the front part of your brain. It's located behind your forehead. And it's responsible for higher level thinking functions like planning, decision-making, problem-solving, and controlling impulses. Basically, the things that we complain that teenagers are not that good at. It is also one of the last parts of the brain to fully develop. Typically, your frontal cortex is not completely mature until your mid-20s. And that fact explains a lot of the differences between the teenage and adult brains. Back to another quote from the book. As an overview of the frontal cortex, the mantra is that it makes you do the harder thing when that is the right thing. So let's apply some of this to the frustrations that teachers face. As a middle school or high school teacher, you're the adult in the room with people who are often the same size as you and may seem to have a lot fewer responsibilities than you do in your life. And sometimes you're like, why can't they just behave? Why can't they just listen? Obviously, they have to know that they should have started on this project that they had a full month to work on and not turn in something that they clearly did during their lunch period. In other words, why can't they just do the right thing? But it can just be helpful to remember that there really are 2 parts to this. Even in a situation where the right thing is pretty clear cut, you also have to have that part of your brain online that makes you do the right thing when the right thing is the harder thing. And that is the prefrontal cortex. This can be pretty exasperating. And it can also make you wonder, why could this possibly have been an evolutionary advantage? Why are they like this? Why? So here's a quote that offers a slightly more inspiring angle on the teenage brain. Because it is the last to mature, by definition, the frontal cortex is the brain region least constrained by genes and most sculpted by experience. Ironically, it seems that the genetic program of human brain development has evolved to, as much as possible, free the frontal cortex from genes. So that area between middle school, high school, and maybe your early 20s is, for better or for worse, the chance to become as different from your parents as possible. If you're teaching any of these ages, you're overseeing these humans during a part of their lives when they are biologically programmed to experiment with changes in their character and potentially make a big leap in their personality that, for whatever reason, their life experience has made them feel is necessary. At the same time, they don't necessarily have the maturity to know which direction to make that leap in. And you can be the person that helps them do that, even if on a day-to-day basis you're not sure what's sinking in. Because they also are a little bit programmed to push back on you. But you knew that. Now let's move on to a quote about the neurobiological basis for teenage drama. Older teenagers experience emotions more intensely than do children or adults. Something obvious to anyone who has ever spent time as a teenager. One of the things that I work with teachers on is managing their own emotional rubber bands, because as the adult in the room, you are kind of responsible for setting the emotional tone of the environment. But at the same time, you are a human and there are things that shorten your fuse. And teenagers especially can be really good at finding those things. But every now and then it can be helpful to remind yourself that their wiring is not as insulated as your wiring at this point. Their emotional thermostats are way more sensitive than yours is, and a lot of them will grow out of it. Some won't, but some will. Most will. Okay, so this next quote is just basically why your students are cooler than you, and there is no point in trying to change that. Novelty craving permeates adolescence. It is when we usually develop our stable tastes in music, food, and fashion, with openness to novelty declining thereafter. So this is why being exposed to middle school or high school students or college students can feel like it makes you a little bit cooler than other adults your age, but you will never be as cool as your students. And the worst thing you can do is probably try. All right, next quote. If you think the adolescents in your life are susceptible to peer pressure, there is scientific evidence to back that up. And here's the quote. Neuroimaging studies show the dramatic sensitivity of adolescents to peers. Ask adults to think about what they imagine others think of them, then about what they think of themselves. Two different, partially overlapping networks of frontal and limbic structures activate for the two tasks. But with adolescents, the two profiles are the same. What do you think about yourself is neurally answered with whatever everyone else thinks about me. I'm going to share something personal here, which is I remember, because I was a teenage girl and I was a middle school girl. Oh God, middle school. Anyway, I just remember one of the microaggressions that girls in like 8th grade love to do to each other is just kind of go like, why do you care so much what people think of you? And I remember as an 8th grader, my reaction was always to be like, I don't care what people think of me. And what do you mean I don't even care? I don't care what people think of me. It's like weirdly the worst thing to be accused of caring what people think of you. Now, when I look back at that time and now as a full adult, if someone were to say like, why do you care so much what people think of you? I would say, of course I care what people think of me. I would care less, but at the same time, I would fully own that there are situations where I care what people think of me. The fact that because of your position, you're the least cool person in the room gives you a chance to carry some of that compassion for your younger self back to your students. Because kids that age are in this trap where they care more than ever what people think of them. And at the same time, they're kind of worried that this isn't normal. So you have this chance to model being an adult who is not too self-conscious to admit that we're all sometimes self-conscious. and that is normal and okay. Next quote. So this next quote is about why it can be so frustrating to try to give students any type of motivational pep talk. Brain imaging suggests that in adolescence, strong rewards produce exaggerated dopaminergic signaling, and nice, sensible rewards for prudent actions feel lousy. I think any teacher can relate to the fact that the risk-reward calculation for your students is never what you want it to be. They just aren't getting the dopamine hit that you want them to get for doing the things that you know will give them a better future. But those are sensible things. Those are not offering a casino level reward that their brains may be craving, which, there you are. Your job is still to mostly try to get them to do sensible things. So, joke's on you. This final quote is my favorite. I just love the way that this captures the wide range of what it means to be an adolescent. Think about this. Adolescence and early adulthood are the times when someone is most likely to kill, be killed, leave home forever, invent an art form, help overthrow a dictator, ethnically cleanse a village, devote themselves to the needy, become addicted, marry outside their group, transform physics, have hideous fashion taste, break their neck recreationally, commit their life to God, mug an old lady, or be convinced that all of history has converged to make this moment the most consequential, the most fraught with peril and promise, the most demanding that they get involved and make a difference. In other words, it's the time of life of maximal risk-taking, novelty-seeking, and affiliation with peers. All because of that immature frontal cortex. I love sharing this quote with teachers because I feel like it really helps you place what it is to be in front of a class of 15-year-olds or college students or high school seniors in a historical context. It's no joke. And bravo to teachers and to anyone else who has voluntarily signed up to help guide humans during this very weird stage in human development.